I loved her first, son, before you ever brought her home, and she loved me back right here in this hospice bed while you were at work. That's William Anderson's voice, David's father, dead 3 weeks now, and those words, recorded 2 days before he died, are playing on loop in David's mind as he stands in his kitchen holding a stack of paper that shouldn't exist. Hospital visitor logs, St. Catherine's Hospice, March through September 2024. David's hands shake. The pages are stamped, dated, signed by front desk staff, official, irrefutable. He's counted the entries twice already, but he counts again because maybe he miscounted. 247 visits. Sarah's name, Sarah Elizabeth Anderson, his wife. David told himself she visited his father 50 times, maybe 60. She'd come home tired, smelling like antiseptic, and he'd thank her. "You're a saint," he'd said once, kissing her forehead while she stood at the sink washing her hands for the 3rd time. The number sits in his throat like a stone. Sarah's in the living room. He can hear the TV, some home renovation show she watches when she can't sleep. She hasn't been sleeping well since the funeral. Grief, David assumed. Guilt, he knows now. He walks into the living room. She's curled on the couch in his old Georgetown sweatshirt, the one that's too big for her. She looks small, innocent. She looks up when he enters, and her smile is automatic, the same smile she's given him for 8 years. "Hey," she says softly. "Couldn't sleep?" David doesn't answer. He sets the visitor logs on the coffee table between them. The papers fan out slightly, a cascade of evidence. Sarah's eyes drop to the stack. Her smile freezes. Doesn't fade, just stops moving, like someone pressed pause. "What's that?" she asks, but her voice has gone careful, tight. "Visitor logs," David says. His voice sounds far away, like he's listening to himself from another room. "From St. Catherine's. Maggie Thompson gave them to me yesterday." Maggie, the night nurse, the one who looked at David during the funeral reception and said, "I'm sorry for your loss." And then quieter, "I'm sorry for everything." He hadn't understood then. Sarah sits up slowly. She reaches for the top page, but David speaks before she touches it. 247 visits. Her hand stops midair. "I counted them," David continues. 3 times. 247 visits between March 12th and September 8th, the day Dad died. Sarah's fingers curl back toward her palm. "David, I thought you went 50 times, maybe 60. You told me you were going twice a week." "I was helping." "Twice a week is not 247 visits in 6 months, Sarah." The TV host is saying something about crown molding. Sarah doesn't look at the screen. She looks at the logs. Specifically, she looks at one page near the top of the stack, and her face, already pale, goes white, bone white. David picks up the page she's staring at. March 12th, 2024. The very first entry, 11:47 p.m. "That was the night he asked me to stay," Sarah whispers, 6 months earlier. David's father, William James Anderson, 68 years old, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, sat in Dr. Morrison's office and listened to a death sentence delivered in clinical terms. 6 months, Dr. Morrison said, looking at William over the top of wire-rimmed glasses. "Maybe 8 with aggressive treatment. I'm sorry, William." David sat beside his father, numb. William nodded slowly, the way someone nods when they're not really processing information, just acknowledging that sound waves have reached their ears. They drove home in silence. William stared out the passenger window at strip malls and gas stations, at a world that would keep turning without him. "You don't have to do this alone," David finally said as they pulled into William's driveway. The house looked too big suddenly, too empty. William's wife, David's mother Catherine, had died 4 years earlier. Heart attack. Sudden. William had been alone since then, rattling around in a 4-bedroom house that smelled like dust and old memories. "I'll be fine," William said automatically. "No." David's voice was firm. "You won't." and that's okay. That night, David talked to Sarah. They were in bed, lights off, her head on his chest. He told her about the diagnosis, about the 6 months, about the way his father had looked so small in the passenger seat. He shouldn't die alone, David said into the dark. Sarah's hand found his. She squeezed. He won't. But I work 60 hours a week. The Henderson project doesn't wrap until June, and I can't... I'll help. David turned his head to look at her. Sarah, I'm serious. She propped herself up on one elbow. In the dim light from the hallway, her eyes were soft, earnest. I work from home. I can check on him, make sure he eats, drive him to appointments. You said yourself he shouldn't be alone. David felt something loosen in his chest. Relief, gratitude. You'd do that? He's family, Sarah said simply. 2 days later, Sarah drove William to St. Catherine's Hospice for intake. David had offered to take off work, but Sarah had insisted. Save your time for when he really needs you, she'd said. The hospice intake coordinator, a woman named Patricia, with kind eyes and too much perfume, walked them through paperwork. William's medical bracelet clicked against the clipboard as he signed forms. Plastic on metal. A small sound, but David would remember it later, the rhythm of it, like a clock ticking down. Sarah sat beside William, her hand on his shoulder. Patricia smiled at them. It's wonderful that you have family support, she said to William. That makes all the difference. William looked at Sarah. Something passed across his face, too quick for David to read. Yes, William said quietly. It does. After the appointment, they stopped for coffee. A small cafe near the hospice, the kind with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. William ordered tea, Sarah got a latte, David got nothing. He had to get back to the office. You're sure about this? David asked Sarah. It's not too much? I'm sure, she said. William stirred his tea slowly, watching the spoon circle the cup. He looked up at Sarah, and his voice, when he spoke, was soft, almost tender. You remind me of someone I used to know. Sarah tilted her head. Oh? But William just smiled, a sad, distant smile, and didn't elaborate. David didn't ask who. He was already thinking about the Henderson project, about the meeting he was missing, about the 60 emails waiting in his inbox. He should have asked. He should have asked who William meant. He should have noticed the way his father's hand lingered on Sarah's when he thanked her for the ride home. He should have noticed a lot of things, but he didn't. 3 months into hospice care. David comes home from work late. Again, it's Thursday, 9:30 p.m. The house is dark except for the kitchen light. Sarah's making tea, her back to him. How was Dad today? David asks, setting his laptop bag on the counter. Good, Sarah says without turning around. Tired, but good. Did he eat? I made him soup. He had about half. David nods, loosening his tie. Thank you. Seriously, I don't know what I'd do without you. Sarah turns then, and she's smiling, but there's something in her eyes, something David can't quite name. It's nothing, she says. It's not nothing. You're spending more time with him than I am. You're working. Someone has to keep the lights on. David crosses the kitchen, pulls her into a hug. She smells like his father's house, like old books and the lavender soap William has used for 30 years. You're a saint, David murmurs into her hair. Sarah's arms tighten around him. I'm really not, she whispers. But David doesn't hear the weight in those words. He's already thinking about tomorrow's presentation. June, a Wednesday afternoon. David leaves work early, a miracle, and drives straight to St. Catherine's. He wants to surprise his father. Maybe take him outside if he's feeling strong enough. The June air is warm, and William always loved sitting in the courtyard. David signs in at the front desk. The receptionist, a young guy named Marcus, smiles. He's got company, Marcus says. Your wife's with him. David nods. Of course she is. Sarah's always there. He walks down the hall. The hospice smells like antiseptic and something sweeter, decay hidden under bleach. Room 14. The door is ajar. David's about to push it open when he hears his father's laugh. Not the polite chuckle William gives to nurses' jokes. This is real, warm. The laugh David remembers from childhood, before his mother died, before the loneliness settled into William's bones. David pauses. Through the gap in the door, he can see them. William's in his chair by the window. Sarah's perched on the edge of his bed, holding something, a photo album maybe. William says something David can't hear, and Sarah throws her head back, laughing. They look comfortable, natural, like they've done this 1,000 times. William reaches out, touches Sarah's hand where it rests on her knee. Just a brief touch, a second, maybe 2, but Sarah doesn't pull away. David's stomach does something strange. A flutter, unease, he'll call it later, but in the moment he just stands there, watching his wife and his dying father exist in a space that feels private, even though there's nothing objectively wrong with what he's seeing. He clears his throat, pushes the door open wider. "Hey!" Sarah startles, turns. "David, hi! I didn't know you were coming." "Surprise!" His voice sounds normal. He's good at normal. "Thought I'd steal Dad for a bit. Take him outside, maybe." William's smiling, but his hand has already dropped from Sarah's. "That sounds wonderful, son." As they leave, William moving slowly with his walker, David beside him, David looks back. Sarah's still sitting on the bed. She's watching them leave, and her expression is something David has never seen on her face before. It looks like longing. July, another Thursday. David's working late again. The Henderson project is a nightmare. Deadlines keep shifting. His boss keeps piling on more work. David's living on coffee and 4 hours of sleep, and he tells himself it's temporary. Just get through the summer. Just get through this. His phone buzzes. A text from Sarah. "Your dad wants to talk to you. Can you call?" David frowns. It's 8 p.m. He calls immediately. William answers on the second ring. "David, Dad, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. William's voice is thin over the phone. Tired. "I wanted to hear your voice. I'll come by this weekend, I promise." "You work too hard?" "Someone has to," David says, trying to keep his tone light. There's a pause, then, "You're lucky to have Sarah." "I know." Another pause. Longer this time. "She's been very kind to me." "That's Sarah. She's got the biggest heart of anyone I know." "Yes," William says softly. "Yes, she does." They talk for a few more minutes, about the weather, about hospice food, about nothing important. When they hang up, David stares at his computer screen, at the spreadsheet that won't balance, and thinks about how his father's voice sounded different, softer, almost guilty. But then his boss emails him with another request, and David stops thinking about his father's voice. August, late afternoon. David stops by St. Catherine's unannounced. He's been trying to visit more, trying to balance work and the ticking clock of his father's life. 6 months, Dr. Morrison said. They're at 5.5 now. He signs in. Marcus isn't at the front desk. It's an older woman David doesn't recognize. She barely glances at him as he heads down the hall. Room 14's doors close. David knocks softly. "Dad?" No answer. He opens the door. The room is empty. The bed's made. William's not in his chair. His walker is gone. David checks the bathroom. Empty. He heads back to the front desk. The older woman looks up. "Excuse me, do you know where William Anderson is?" She checks her computer. "Looks like courtyard. His wife took him out about 20 minutes ago." David heads outside. The courtyard is small, lined with benches and flower beds maintained by volunteers. There's a fountain in the center, the water circling endlessly. He sees them on a bench in the far corner. William sitting with his face tilted toward the sun, eyes closed. Sarah's beside him, talking. David's too far away to hear words, but he can see Sarah's hands moving as she speaks, animated, engaged. William opens his eyes, turns his head to look at her. He says something. Sarah laughs, then reaches into her purse. She pulls out a small piece of paper, folded once, and hands it to William. William unfolds it, reads whatever's written there, and then carefully tucks it into his shirt pocket. His hand pats the pocket twice, like he's making sure it's secure. They sit in silence after that, comfortable silence. David walks toward them. Gravel crunches under his shoes. Sarah hears him first, turns. Her smile is immediate, but David catches something underneath it. Something fleeting. Fear? Surprise? No, that's ridiculous. "Hey," David says. "Didn't know you'd be here today." "I was just..." Sarah gestures vaguely. "Keeping him company." "I saw you give him something." The words come out sharper than David intends. He's not sure why he said it at all. Sarah blinks. "What?" "A piece of paper. I saw you hand him a piece of paper." William's hand moves to his shirt pocket. Protective. "It's just a phone number," he says. David looks between them. "A phone number?" "My new number," Sarah says quickly. "I changed carriers last week, remember? I texted you about it." David does remember, vaguely. She'd complained about Verizon's coverage. "Why does Dad need your new number?" Sarah's expression shifts, not quite annoyed, not quite defensive, something in between. "So he can text me if he needs anything at night. He has my number." "You're working, David." Sarah's voice has an edge now. "You're working 60, 70 hours a week. What's he supposed to do? Wait for you to maybe check your phone between meetings?" Other families are in the courtyard. An elderly woman in a wheelchair. A middle-aged couple holding hands. They're not staring, but they're close enough to hear raised voices. David lowers his voice. "I'm just asking why he needs a new number." "Don't be dramatic," Sarah says. She stands, brushes off her jeans. "It's just innocent flirting. Old people like feeling useful, like they still matter. He wanted my number, so I gave it to him." The phrase hangs in the air. Just innocent flirting. David's brain catches on the word flirting. Why would she call it that? Why not just say keeping in touch or staying connected? William's hand is still on his pocket. David looks at his father. "Why do you need a new number, Dad?" William meets his eyes. For a moment, there's something in his father's expression. Guilt, maybe, or sorrow. But then it's gone, replaced by the tired smile of a dying man. "Don't fuss, son," William says gently. "Your wife is just being kind." Sarah's phone buzzes. She checks it, then looks at David. "I need to go. Conference call in 20 minutes. She leans down, kisses William's forehead. "I'll see you tomorrow." Then she turns to David, kisses his cheek. "Love you. Don't work too late." She leaves. David sits beside his father on the bench. They watch the fountain together, water, circling, circling. "She's a good woman," William says after a while. "I know. You're lucky." "I know that too." William's hand pats his shirt pocket again. The paper crinkles faintly. David wants to ask what else is written on that paper. He wants to ask why his father looks at his wife the way he does, like she's sunlight, like she's water in a desert. But he doesn't ask, because that would be dramatic, and it's just innocent flirting, right? If you've ever been told you're overreacting when your gut screamed otherwise, if you've ever dismissed your own instincts because someone called you dramatic, type "I felt that" in the comments. September 8th, 2024, 2:47 a.m. David's phone rings. He lurches awake, heart hammering. Sarah stirs beside him. David grabs his phone, squints at the screen. St. Catherine's Hospice. "Hello? Mr. Anderson, this is Maggie Thompson, night nurse. I'm calling about your father." David's already out of bed, pulling on jeans with one hand. "What happened?" "He's declining rapidly. You should come now." The drive takes 12 minutes. David doesn't remember any of it. Sarah's beside him in the passenger seat, quiet. Her hands are folded in her lap. They run into the building. Well, David runs. Sarah walks quickly, her face pale. Maggie meets them outside room 14. She's in her 50s, gray hair pulled back, eyes kind but tired. "He's asking for you," she says to David. David pushes open the door. The room is dim, lit only by the equipment monitors. William's in bed, propped up slightly. His breathing is labored, rattling. His eyes are closed. "Dad." David's beside the bed immediately, taking his father's hand. It's cold, thin. "Dad, I'm here." William's eyes flutter open. He looks at David, and recognition takes a moment to focus. "Son," William whispers, "I'm here. I'm right here." William's gaze shifts past David. Sarah's standing in the doorway. She hasn't come closer. "Sarah," William breathes. Sarah steps forward, but slowly. She stops at the foot of the bed. William's hand moves weakly, gesturing. David thinks he wants water, reaches for the cup, but William shakes his head. "Drawer," William rasps. "Left drawer." David opens the nightstand drawer. Inside are the expected items: tissues, lip balm, a paperback William never finished, a small bottle of lotion, and something unexpected: a digital voice recorder, small, black, with a yellow post-it note stuck to it. The note, in William's handwriting, "Play after I'm gone." David's fingers close around the recorder. He looks at his father. William's eyes are closing. His breathing changes, slower, more shallow. The rattle deepens. "Dad?" But William doesn't answer. His hand goes slack in David's grip. The monitors change their rhythm, a long, steady tone. Maggie comes in quickly, checks vitals, then steps back. She puts a hand on David's shoulder. "I'm sorry," she says softly. David stares at his father's face. William looks peaceful, almost like he's sleeping. Except he's not sleeping. He's gone. Sarah's crying, quiet, restrained sobs. She covers her mouth with one hand. David doesn't cry. Not yet. He's still holding the recorder. "Play after I'm gone." Maggie leaves them alone. Sarah moves to David's side, puts her arm around him. "I'm so sorry," she whispers. David nods. He can't speak. There's a weight in his throat, in his chest, pressing down. They stay for an hour. Nurses come and go. Paperwork gets signed. Phone calls get made. Finally, they go home. David drives. Sarah's silent. When they get home, dawn is starting to break, pale light creeping through the windows. "Try to sleep," Sarah says. "I'll handle the funeral home stuff in the morning." David shakes his head. "I'm not tired." He goes into his study, closes the door. He sits at his desk. The recorder is in his hand. "Play after I'm gone." David presses play. Static. A cough. Then William's voice. Stronger than it's been in months, like the recording was made earlier when he had more energy. "David, if you're listening to this, I'm dead. And I need to tell you something I should have told you while I was alive, but I'm a coward. I've always been a coward." A pause. William clears his throat. "I had an affair with your wife." The room tilts. "It started in March. She was kind to me, patient. She listened. And I was lonely, David. So goddamn lonely. Your mother's been gone 4 years, and I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. To matter." David's hands are shaking. Sarah. Sarah made me feel alive again. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being about comfort. It became something else. William's voice cracks. "I loved her first, son, before you ever brought her home. Not literally. I know that's not what I mean, but I loved her first in those last months. I loved her while I was dying, and she loved me back, right here in this hospice bed, while you were at work." David's vision blurs. "I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry, but I'm also not. Because she made dying beautiful. And I think that's the cruelest part. That I'm grateful." Silence. Then, "If you're hearing this, I kept my promise. I left everything to her in the will. She earned it. She earned every goddamn thing." The recording clicks off. David sits in his study as the sun comes up. The recorder is still in his hand. From the bedroom, he can hear water running. Sarah's in the shower. And David realizes she hasn't asked about the recorder. Not once. She already knows what's on it. David doesn't confront Sarah immediately. He should. He knows he should. But there's a funeral to plan, obituaries to write, relatives to notify, his Aunt Patricia in Vermont, his father's old college roommate in Florida, people who need to know that William James Anderson, beloved father and widower, has died peacefully in hospice care, surrounded by love. The lie tastes like copper in David's mouth. Sarah handles most of the arrangements. She's good at this. Logistics, phone calls, the small terrible details of death. She picks out a casket. She orders flowers. She writes a draft of the obituary and shows it to David for approval. William is survived by his son, David, and daughter-in-law, Sarah, who provided devoted care during his final months. Devoted care. David stares at the words until they stop looking like words at all, just shapes on a screen. "It's good," he tells Sarah. She nods, relief flickering across her face. "I wasn't sure about the wording." David goes back to his study. He's locked the recorder in his desk drawer. He hasn't told Sarah he listened to it. He doesn't know why. Maybe because once he says the words out loud, "I know," everything becomes real, irreversible. So he waits. The funeral is on a Wednesday. 63 people attend, more than David expected. His father had become so isolated after Catherine died, but apparently people remembered William. Colleagues from his 30 years as an accountant, neighbors, members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars post where William had volunteered. Father Murphy gives the eulogy. He talks about service, about William's quiet kindness, about how William faced death with dignity. Sarah sits beside David in the front pew. She's wearing black, her hair pulled back, her face composed. She cries at the right moments. She accepts condolences gracefully. She plays the part of the grieving daughter-in-law perfectly. David's sister Jessica flies in from Boston. She's 3 years older than David, a corporate lawyer with silver threading through her dark hair and her mother's sharp eyes. She hugs David hard at the reception. "I'm so sorry," she murmurs. "I should have visited more." "You were busy." "That's not an excuse." Jessica pulls back, studies his face. "You look like hell." "I feel like hell." Jessica glances across the room where Sarah's talking to Aunt Patricia. "How's Sarah holding up?" David follows her gaze. Sarah's nodding, touching Patricia's arm, offering comfort. "She's fine," he says flatly. Jessica's eyes narrow. "David, not here." David's voice is low. "Not now." But Jessica knows him too well. She's known him for 38 years. She knows when he's lying. Later, after the reception, after the last casserole has been delivered and the last relative has hugged him goodbye, Jessica corners David in William's study. "What's going on?" she asks. David's sitting at his father's desk. The same desk where William did taxes every April, where he paid bills, where he wrote Christmas card in his careful, slanted handwriting. David pulls the recorder from his pocket. He's been carrying it like a talisman, a grenade. "Listen to this," he says. Jessica takes the recorder, presses play. David watches her face as William's voice fills the room, watches the confusion become understanding, the understanding become horror. When the recording ends, Jessica sits down heavily in William's leather chair. "Jesus Christ," she whispers. "Yeah." "Does Sarah know you heard this?" "I haven't told her." Jessica's lawyer brain is already working. David can see it in her eyes, the way they've gone sharp and calculating. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." "David." "I don't know, Jess." His voice cracks. "He was dying. He was my father, and he was dying, and maybe he wasn't thinking clearly. The pain meds, Don't." Jessica's voice is hard. "Don't make excuses for him, or for her." David's hands are shaking again. They've been shaking since he listened to the recording 3 days ago. Jessica stands, paces to the window. William's house overlooks a small yard, overgrown now. No one's mowed in weeks. The will reading is tomorrow, she says. I know. Have you seen the will? Dad's lawyer sent me a copy. Standard stuff. Everything splits between me and... David stops. Jessica turns. And? The copy I got is dated 2019, right after Mom died. David. Jessica's voice has gone very quiet. When was the will last updated? David meets her eyes. I don't know. Bradford Mitchell's law office is in downtown 15th floor, glass and steel and uncomfortable modern furniture. David sits beside Jessica. Sarah's on David's other side, her hand resting on his knee. Supportive, wifely. Mitchell is in his 60s, gray beard, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He's known the Anderson family for 20 years. He handled Catherine's will. He golfed with William every summer. Thank you all for coming, Mitchell says, settling into his chair. I know this is difficult. He opens a folder. David sees the will, more pages than he expected. William updated this will on June 4th, 2024. Mitchell begins. June. 3 months ago, right in the middle of the affair. Jessica's hand finds David's under the table. She squeezes hard. Mitchell reads through the preliminaries, legal language, executor designation, funeral instructions. Then he gets to the assets. To my son, David Michael Anderson, I leave the sum of $1. The words don't make sense at first. David's brain refuses to process them. I'm sorry, David says. What? Mitchell looks up, uncomfortable. Your father specified, and I counseled against this for the record, that you were to receive $1. He included a note explaining that this was intentional, so you could not claim he forgot you. The room is very quiet. Jessica's voice is ice. And the rest of the estate? Mitchell clears his throat. Everything else, the house, investments, savings, life insurance proceeds, goes to Sarah Elizabeth Anderson. Sarah makes a small sound. Surprise, David thinks. But when he turns to look at her, her face is wrong. Not surprised, almost relieved. That's not possible, Jessica says. The 2019 will split everything between David and this supersedes any previous wills. Mitchell slides a document across the desk. Signed, witnessed, notarized, completely legal. David stares at the paper. His father's signature, June 4th, 2024. Below William's name, Sarah's address is listed as beneficiary. I don't understand, David says, but that's a lie. He understands perfectly. Sarah's crying. Real tears this time streaming down her face. David, I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. He never told you? Jessica's voice is sharp. No, he said he was updating some paperwork, but I thought it was medical stuff. Power of attorney, maybe. I never... Sarah's voice breaks. David, please, you have to believe me. David looks at her. At this woman he's loved for 8 years. This woman who held his hand through his mother's funeral, who laughed at his terrible jokes, who whispered, I love you in the dark on 1,000 ordinary nights. This woman who fucked his dying father. Get out, David says quietly. Sarah blinks. What? Get out of this office. Get out of my sight. David, get out. His voice doesn't rise. That's somehow worse than shouting. The control in it. The finality. Sarah stands shakily. She looks at Mitchell, at Jessica, back to David. I didn't know about the will, she says one more time. Then she leaves. The door clicks shut. Mitchell is pale. David, I'm sorry. If I'd known about the circumstances, I would have advised William differently. Did he seem coerced? Jessica asks. Was he on medication that might have impaired his judgment? He was on OxyContin for pain management, Mitchell says slowly, but he seemed lucid, determined. He said, Mitchell stops. What? David's voice is hollow. What did he say? He said Sarah had earned it, that she'd given him something precious in his final months, and he wanted to make sure she was taken care of. David laughs. It sounds like breaking glass. He wanted to make sure she was taken care of. That's... He can't finish the sentence. Jessica's already pulling out her phone. I'm calling my firm. We're contesting this. On what grounds? Mitchell asks gently. Undue influence, diminished capacity, fraud. Take your pick. Mitchell nods slowly. That's your right, but I should tell you, William anticipated this. He included a letter. For you, David. He slides an envelope across the desk. David's name on the front. William's handwriting. David doesn't touch it. I can't, he said. Not yet. Jessica takes the envelope, tucks it into her briefcase. We'll need copies of everything. The will, the codicil, any correspondence between William and Sarah, medical records showing his medication schedule, and I want visitor logs from St. Catherine's. Visitor logs? Mitchell frowns. Just get 'em, Jessica says. They go back to David's house. Sarah's car isn't in the driveway. David doesn't know where she went. He doesn't care. Jessica makes coffee. Neither of them drinks. She spreads documents across David's dining room table like she's preparing for trial. Walk me through the timeline, she says. David does. March to September. The diagnosis, the hospice care, Sarah's increasing involvement, the number exchange, the way William looked at Sarah. All the small moments David dismissed as nothing. Jessica takes notes. When David finishes, she sits back. We need evidence, she says. The recording is a start, but we need more. Phone records, text messages, anything that proves the affair. I have the visitor logs, David says. Maggie gave them to me. Maggie? The night nurse, David hesitates. She apologized to me at the funeral, said she was sorry for everything. I didn't understand at the time, but I think she knew. Jessica's eyes light up. Lawyer eyes. We need to talk to her. They go to St. Catherine's the next day. Maggie's working the day shift, which is unusual for her, but she'd switched schedules to attend William's funeral. She meets them in a small conference room. She's still in her scrubs, her gray hair pulled back, exhaustion etched into her face. Mr. Anderson, she says to David, I wasn't sure if I'd hear from you. You gave me the visitor logs, David says. Why? Maggie sits down heavily. Because you deserved to know. Because I watched it happen and I did nothing, and that's going to haunt me for the rest of my life. Jessica pulls out a legal pad. Ms. Thompson, I'm David's sister. I'm also an attorney. Would you be willing to give a statement about what you observed? Maggie looks at David. This is going to hurt. It already hurts, David says. Maggie nods. She takes a breath. The affair started in April, maybe late March. I'm not sure exactly when, but I started noticing things. Sarah would come late at night, 10, 11 p.m. She'd stay for hours. That's not necessarily inappropriate, Jessica says, playing devil's advocate. Family members often keep vigil. At first, I thought the same thing. Maggie's voice is steady, clinical, nurse voice. But then I noticed the door would be closed, locked. And when I'd knock to do vitals checks, there'd be a delay before Sarah answered. She'd be flushed. Her clothes would be disheveled. David feels sick. On April 9th, Maggie continues, I walked in during a sponge bath. Sarah was supposed to be helping William bathe. But when I entered, I'd knocked, but there was no answer, and I was worried. Sarah was crying. William was holding her face in his hands. They weren't doing anything explicitly sexual, but the intimacy... Maggie stops. That's not caregiving. That's intimacy. Jessica writes rapidly. Did you report this? I filed an incident report with my supervisor, but it went nowhere. William was a patient with the right to visitors. Sarah was family. Unless there was clear evidence of abuse or coercion, Maggie shrugs helplessly. It was classified as a family matter. Did you talk to William about it? David asks. His voice sounds far away. Once, I asked if he felt safe, if anyone was pressuring him. He said... Maggie's voice softens. He said Sarah was the only thing making him want to live. The room is silent except for Jessica's pen scratching paper. There's more, Maggie says quietly. She reaches into her pocket, pulls out a folded piece of paper. I kept this. I shouldn't have, but I did. She unfolds it. It's an incident report dated July 12th, 2024. 2:35 a.m. I did a bed check. The door to room 14 was closed, not unusual, but I heard sounds. I knocked, waited. Finally, William called out that everything was fine. When I entered, Sarah was in the chair beside his bed, but the chair had been moved. It was right up against the bed, and her hand was under the blanket. David stands abruptly, walks to the window. He can't hear this. He has to hear this. Jessica's voice is calm, professional. What did you observe after you entered? Sarah pulled her hand back. William was... Maggie pauses. He looked guilty. They both did. I took William's vitals. His heart rate was elevated. He was sweating. He said he'd had a nightmare, but... But you didn't believe him, Jessica finishes. No, I didn't. Jessica taps her pen against the legal pad. Why didn't you tell David or call the ethics board? Maggie looks at David's back. Because William was dying. He had maybe 8 weeks left, and he seemed happy. Genuinely happy for the first time since I'd been caring for him. So I told myself it was mercy, that Sarah was giving him something to hold on to in his last days. She stands, walks over to David. I was wrong. I should have told you. I'm sorry. David turns. His eyes are dry. He's cried out, or maybe he's just numb. How often? He asks. How often did you see them together like that? Maggie looks away. 37 times. I counted. 37 times between April and September where I walked in on something that crossed a line. 37 times. 247 visits. 37 times that crossed a line. The math is devastating. David goes to his father's house alone. Jessica offers to come, but he needs to do this by himself. The house smells stale, closed up. David opens windows, lets September air flow through rooms that haven't breathed in weeks. He starts in William's bedroom. He's looking for something, evidence, confirmation. He's not sure what. He goes through drawers, the closet, under the bed. In the nightstand, he finds a box. It's wooden, small, with a brass latch. David recognizes it. His mother gave it to William on their 20th anniversary. She'd had it engraved, "To my love, always." David opens the latch. Inside are letters, 3 of them, handwritten on hospital stationery, the kind with St. Catherine's Hospice printed at the top. David sits on the edge of his father's bed and reads. Letter 1, dated May 15th, 2024. Sarah, I don't know what to call this thing between us. It started as kindness, yours, and loneliness, mine. But somewhere in the hours you've spent sitting with me, talking to me, touching my hand when the pain gets bad, it became something else. I know this is wrong. You're married to my son. I'm dying. These are facts I recite to myself every night. But then you walk through that door and facts stop mattering. You asked me yesterday what I regret most about my life. I told you I regret not traveling more, not learning to play piano, small things. But the truth is, I regret that I met you too late. I'm 68 years old. I've been in love twice in my life, once with Catherine and now with you. But Catherine's been gone 4 years, and I've got maybe 4 months left. Do the math. It's cruel. You said you'd come back tomorrow. Please do. Please keep coming back. You're the only reason I haven't asked Dr. Morrison for the morphine drip. William, letter 2, dated June 20th, 2024. Sarah, last night when you fell asleep in the chair beside my bed, I watched you for an hour. Your hand was in mine, and I could feel your pulse, steady, strong, alive. I'm terrified of dying. I don't think I've admitted that to anyone before, not even Catherine at the end. But I'm terrified. Not of the pain, morphine handles that now, but of the nothingness, the stopping. When I'm with you, the fear goes quiet. David called this morning. He asked if I needed anything. I lied and said no. The truth is, I need his wife. I need her voice, her laugh, the way she rests her head on my shoulder when she thinks I'm asleep. I'm stealing her from him. I know that. I'm dying, and I'm stealing the only good thing he has. You were always the strong one, David. That's what I told you growing up, and it's true. You've always been stronger than me. So maybe you'll forgive this. Maybe you'll understand that in my last months, I became weak, selfish, or maybe you won't. Maybe this will break you. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. But I'm also not sorry, and that's the worst part. William, letter 3, dated September 6th, 2024, 2 days before he died. Sarah, if you're reading this, I kept my promise. I left you everything, the house, the money, all of it. David will be hurt, furious, betrayed. He has every right. But you earned this, Sarah. You gave me something I thought was gone forever. The feeling of being wanted. Not needed, not obligated to, wanted. Mitchell will call it undue influence. The courts might too. But this is my choice, made while I was lucid, while I still knew my own mind. I love you. I know I'm not supposed to say that. I know it's not mine to feel, but I'm dying, and the dead get to be honest. Tell David I'm sorry. Tell him I'm not sorry. Tell him whatever you need to tell him to make him understand that this wasn't about him. It was never about him. It was about me and my fear, and the fact that you made me forget for hours at a time that I was dying. If there's a God, I'll answer to him for this. If there's nothing, then this letter is all that's left. I loved you first. Not chronologically, I know that's insane, but in those last months, I loved you first before food, before sleep, before my own son. And you loved me back, right here, in this hospice bed, while David was at work. Thank you for that. Thank you for lying beside a dying man and making him feel alive. If David finds this, tell him I stole the only thing he ever loved. Forgive me, or don't. I'm past judgment now. Yours, even in death. William David sits with the letters for a long time. Sunlight moves across the floor as hours pass. He should be angry. He is angry. But he's also something else. Something he doesn't have a word for. His father was dying, terrified, alone. And Sarah gave him comfort. But comfort doesn't require love letters. Comfort doesn't require changing a will. Comfort doesn't require stealing. David carefully folds the letters, returns them to the box. He takes the box with him when he leaves. That night, David can't sleep. He's staying at a hotel. He can't go back to the house he shares with Sarah, can't lie in the bed where they've slept beside each other for 8 years. At 2 a.m., he gets up, starts searching. If William kept letters, maybe Sarah did too. He drives to the house. Sarah's car is there, but the lights are off. David uses his key, enters quietly. He goes to the bedroom. Sarah's asleep, curled on her side of the bed, the side that isn't his anymore. David goes to her closet. At the back, behind shoeboxes and winter coats, there's a lockbox. Small, gray. David knows the combination. It's the same as their home safe. 0812, Catherine's birthday. He opens it. Inside, Sarah's passport, birth certificate, some old jewelry, and a leather-bound diary. David takes it to the living room, turns on a lamp, and opens to the first page. March 15th, 2024. David asked me to help with William. I said yes, because that's what wives do. They help, they care, they show up. I didn't expect to like him. William, I mean. David's always talked about his father like he's this distant, cold man. But when I sat with him today, at his intake appointment, he was kind. He asked about my work, my life. He listened. When was the last time someone really listened to me? April the 2nd, 2024. I told David I was going to book club. I was in William's room. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just talking. But I stayed until midnight, and William held my hand. And when I left, I felt guilty. Not guilty enough to stop. May 20th, 2024. David called me his hero today for taking care of William. If he knew what I feel when William touches my hand, when he says my name in that soft way, like I'm something precious. I'm falling in love with my husband's dying father. What kind of person does that make me? June 8th, 2024. William told me he changed his will. He said he wanted me to have the house, the money, everything. I told him that was crazy, that David would never forgive me. He said, good people don't always get what they deserve, but you do. You deserve to be taken care of. I didn't say no. I should have said no. July 30th, 2024. William asked if I'd stay with him all night. I said yes. We didn't have sex. He's too weak for that now. But I lay beside him in that narrow hospice bed, and he held me. And for hours, I forgot he was dying. I forgot I was married. I forgot everything except the feeling of being wanted this much. August 15th, 2024. David's working 70-hour weeks. He comes home exhausted, eats dinner in front of his laptop, falls asleep on the couch. I could tell him about William, about the affair, about the will, but what would that accomplish? William's dying. Let the man die happy. Let me have this one thing before it's over. Is that selfish? Yes. Am I going to stop? No. September 7th, 2024. The day before William died. William's fading. Hours left, maybe a day. I sat with him all afternoon. He kept saying my name over and over. Sarah, Sarah. He told me he loved me. Not the first time, but this time it felt different. Final. I said it back. I love you too. And I meant it. God help me, I meant it. David closes the diary. He sits in the dark living room of the house he bought with Sarah 5 years ago. The house where they hosted dinner parties, where they talked about having children someday, where they built a life. That life is ash now. But as David reads through Sarah's diary again, slower this time, trying to understand, he realizes something. Sarah fell. She didn't plan this. She didn't seduce a dying man for money. She fell. Accidentally, stupidly, inevitably. She fell in love with someone who was dying, and she stayed because leaving felt crueler than staying. Does that make it forgivable? David doesn't know, but it makes it complicated. And complications are harder to hate than clear villains. Here's the question I need you to answer. If someone betrays you out of mercy, does the intention erase the damage? Comment 1 for yes, mercy matters. Comment 2 for no, betrayal is betrayal. But here's the twist. There's evidence for both sides. So which do you believe? The courthouse is gray stone and fluorescent lights and the smell of old paper and anxiety. David sits beside Jessica at the plaintiff's table. Sarah sits across the aisle with her lawyer, a woman named Rebecca Chen, mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who makes juries cry. The Honorable Catherine Reynolds presides. She's in her 60s, silver hair, reading glasses perched on her nose. She's heard 10,000 sad stories in this courtroom. This is just one more. This is a will contest, Judge Reynolds says, looking over the docket. Anderson veers Anderson. The deceased is William James Anderson. The plaintiff is his son, David Anderson. The defendant is Sarah Anderson, the primary beneficiary. Jessica stands. Your Honor, we're contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. William Anderson was on high doses of OxyContin for pain management during the period he revised his will. We have evidence that the defendant exploited her position as caregiver to manipulate Mr. Anderson into changing his will in her favor. Rebecca Chen stands. Your Honor, William Anderson was lucid and of sound mind when he updated his will. He was examined by his physician, Dr. Morrison, who cleared him as mentally competent. Mr. Anderson's decision to leave his estate to Mrs. Anderson reflects his gratitude for the exceptional care she provided during his final months. This is a family dispute masquerading as a legal one. Judge Reynolds looks between them. I've reviewed the preliminary filings. This is going to take more than one session. But let's start with evidence. Miss Clark, you may proceed. Jessica calls her first witness, Bradford Mitchell, William's lawyer. Mitchell takes the stand, is sworn in. He looks uncomfortable. This is his client's family tearing itself apart in public. Mr. Mitchell, Jessica begins, when did William Anderson first contact you about updating his will? May 30th, 2024. And when was the new will executed? June 4th. 5 days later. Jessica lets that sit. Did William explain why he wanted to change his will? Mitchell shifts. He said Sarah had been providing care, that he wanted to ensure she was taken care of financially. Did he mention his son? He said David was capable, that David had a good job and didn't need the inheritance. But he left David $1. Not nothing. $1. Why? He said, Mitchell pauses. He said he wanted to make it clear this was intentional, that he hadn't forgotten David. Jessica walks to the evidence table, picks up a document. This is William's medical record from June the 1st, 2024, 3 days before the will was signed. Can you read the highlighted section? Mitchell puts on his reading glasses. Patient reports pain level 8 out of 10. Prescribed OxyContin 40 milligrams every 12 hours with additional oxycodone for breakthrough pain. That's a significant dosage, isn't it? I'm not a doctor, but you've handled estates for 30 years. You've seen clients on pain medication. Did William seem impaired to you? Mitchell hesitates. He seemed determined, but also tired. He'd lost weight. He was clearly ill. Did he mention Sarah Anderson during your meeting? Several times. What did he say? Mitchell looks at Sarah. She's staring at her hands. He said Sarah had given him a reason to live, that she made him feel seen. He became emotional when he spoke about her. Emotional how? He cried. The courtroom is silent. No further questions, Jessica says. Rebecca Chen cross-examines, tries to establish that William was competent, that his feelings were genuine, that love, even late-life love, doesn't constitute undue influence. But the damage is done. The jury, no, this is a bench trial, Judge Reynolds. The judge has seen the tears, the high medication dosage, the 5-day turnaround. Jessica calls Maggie Thompson next. Maggie takes the stand, gives her testimony. The 247 visits, the locked doors, the incident report from April 9th, Sarah crying, William holding her face. When Jessica asks about July 12th, the night Maggie heard sounds, saw Sarah's hand under the blanket, Sarah covers her mouth. A small sound escapes, not quite a sob, something closer to a whimper. Rebecca Chen objects repeatedly. Speculation, assumes facts not in evidence, inflammatory. Judge Reynolds sustains some, overrules others. Maggie finishes her testimony. She looks at David as she steps down. I'm sorry, she mouths. David nods. He's past anger. He's somewhere beyond it now, in a place that feels like the bottom of the ocean. Quiet, cold, dark. Jessica introduces the visitor logs. They're entered as Exhibit C. She introduces William's letters. Exhibit D. She introduces Sarah's diary. Exhibit E. Rebecca Chen fights hard against the diary. Inadmissible. Obtained without consent. Invasion of privacy. But Judge Reynolds allows it. This is a civil proceeding, not criminal, and the diary is directly relevant to the question of undue influence. Jessica reads excerpts aloud. I'm falling in love with my husband's dying father. I could tell him about William, about the affair, about the will, but what would that accomplish? I said it back. I love you too. And I meant it. Sarah's crying now, real tears, silent and steady. Rebecca Chen leans over, whispers something. Sarah shakes her head. David watches his wife, ex-wife, he's already started thinking of her that way, and feels something crack inside him, not his heart, That broke weeks ago. Something deeper. The foundation, maybe. The thing that holds a person upright. On the second day of proceedings, Jessica drops the bomb. Your Honor, she says, standing with a manila folder, we've obtained additional evidence, medical records from St. Catherine's Hospice billing department. She hands copies to the judge, to Rebecca Chen, to the court reporter. David hasn't seen this. Jessica worked on it last night, called in favors from her firm's investigators. She only told him this morning. There's one more thing. It's bad, David. It's really bad. Judge Reynolds opens the folder, reads. Her face doesn't change. Judges are good at that, but her eyes narrow. Ms. Clark, she says slowly, are you alleging what I think you're alleging? Yes, Your Honor. Rebecca Chen is reading fast, her face going pale. She looks at Sarah. Sarah's staring at the table. Jessica addresses the court. On July 23, 2024, Sarah Anderson visited the emergency room at St. Catherine's Hospital. She was experiencing cramping and bleeding. She was 8 weeks pregnant. The courtroom erupts. Whispers, gasps. Judge Reynolds bangs her gavel. Order, Jessica continues, her voice steady, clinical. The pregnancy was not viable. Mrs. Anderson miscarried. But before the miscarriage was confirmed, a standard intake form was filled out. On that form, in the section labeled Father of Baby, Sarah Anderson wrote, William Anderson. She puts the form on the projector. It's blown up, massive on the screen. Right there, in Sarah's handwriting, William Anderson, not David. William. David can't breathe. The room is spinning. Jessica keeps going. We obtained DNA samples from William's remains, legally with proper authorization. We compared them to genetic material from the miscarriage tissue, which was retained by the hospital. The lab results are conclusive. She hands another document to the judge. Probability of paternity, 98.7%. The courtroom is silent now, dead silent. William Anderson, Jessica says, was the biological father of Sarah Anderson's baby. Rebecca Chen asks for a recess. Judge Reynolds grants it. David walks out of the courtroom like a zombie. Jessica's beside him, her hand on his arm, guiding him to a bench in the hallway. I'm sorry, she's saying. I'm so sorry, David. I had to. The case needed. I know. David's voice is flat. You did what you had to do. Did you know about the pregnancy? David shakes his head. Sarah never told me. Because she knew. She knew it wasn't his. How many lies can one person hold? How many secrets can fit in a marriage before it collapses under the weight? Jessica sits beside him. They don't talk. What is there to say? Down the hall, Rebecca Chen is with Sarah in a conference room. David can see them through the window. Sarah's bent over, head in her hands. Rebecca's talking fast, gesturing. After 20 minutes, they come back. Sarah looks destroyed. Her makeup is gone, cried off. Her eyes are red and swollen. She looks smaller somehow, diminished. The trial resumes. Your Honor, Rebecca Chen says, my client wishes to make a statement. Judge Reynolds nods. Proceed. Sarah takes the witness stand. She's sworn in. Her hand shakes on the Bible. Rebecca Chen asks the questions gently. Mrs. Anderson, did you have a romantic relationship with William Anderson? Yes. Sarah's voice is barely audible. When did it begin? April, late April. And the pregnancy was William Anderson the father? Sarah's face crumples. Yes. Did you tell your husband about the pregnancy? No. Why not? Sarah looks at David for the first time. Her eyes are oceans. Because I knew it wasn't his. Did William Anderson know about the pregnancy? Yes. What was his reaction? Sarah's crying harder now, but she keeps talking. He was happy. He said it was a miracle, that maybe he'd get to see it born or at least know it existed. He said, her voice breaks. He said the baby was proof that he'd lived, that he'd loved. What happened to the pregnancy? I miscarried. At 8 weeks. Did you tell David about the miscarriage? No. Why not? Because telling him about the miscarriage meant telling him about the affair, and I couldn't destroy him like that. Jessica stands. Objection. The witness is testifying to her state of mind to justify. Sustained. Judge Reynolds looks at Sarah. Mrs. Anderson, stick to facts, not justifications. Sarah nods, wipes her eyes. Rebecca Chen continues. Did William Anderson coerce you into this relationship? No. Did he threaten you? No. Then why? Why did you enter into this affair? Sarah takes a shaky breath. Because he was dying, and he was so lonely, and David was working all the time, and I was lonely too. That doesn't answer the question. He made me feel wanted. Sarah's voice is raw now, scraped clean. Not needed, not obligated, wanted. He looked at me like I was the son, like I mattered more than anything. And I know that's selfish, I know that's terrible, but when you spend years feeling invisible in your own marriage. Objection. Jessica's voice is sharp. The witness is now attacking the plaintiff. Sustained. Mrs. Anderson, focus on your relationship with the deceased, not with your husband. Sarah nods, but her eyes are still on David. He begged me to love him, she says quietly. William begged. He said dying alone was worse than death. That every night he lay in that bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the hours until morning. He said I was the only thing that made him want to wake up. Tears are streaming down her face. So I stayed. I stayed every night I could. I held his hand. I laid beside him. I let him love me. And somewhere in all of that, Sarah's voice drops to a whisper. I fell in love with your dying father, David. I fell in love with him, and I'm not sorry I made his last months beautiful. I'm only sorry it destroyed you. The courtroom is silent. Judge Reynolds clears her throat. Ms. Chen, do you have further questions? Rebecca Chen looks at Sarah, then at the judge. No, Your Honor, the defense rests. Judge Reynolds takes 2 days to deliberate. When she returns, her decision is swift. This is a deeply tragic case, she begins. William Anderson was dying. Sarah Anderson provided care. At some point, that care became inappropriate. Whether it crossed into exploitation is the question before this court. She looks at Sarah. Mrs. Anderson, I believe you when you say you loved William Anderson. I believe the relationship, however inappropriate, was genuine on both sides. Then she looks at David. But Mr. Anderson, David, you are the victim here. Your father, in his final months, made decisions that were influenced by pain, fear, and medication. The will, dated June 4th, was executed while William Anderson was on significant opioid dosages. While that doesn't automatically invalidate the document, combined with the evidence of an affair, the pregnancy, and the rapid change in estate planning. She pauses. I find that William Anderson was under undue influence when he executed the revised will. The will dated June 4th, 2024 is hereby declared invalid. The previous will dated March 2019 is reinstated. The estate will be divided equally between David Anderson and Sarah Anderson as originally specified. Sarah makes a sound. Relief, maybe, or resignation. Jessica squeezes David's hand, but David feels nothing. Not victory, not vindication, just emptiness. Because what did he win? Half an estate? His father's house? He lost everything that mattered. Sarah's lawyer argued she was manipulated. David's lawyer said she made a choice. Who do you believe? Drop your take below, but here's the twist. There's evidence for both, and in the end, the judge split the difference. But could you forgive? Stay till the end. 3 weeks after the verdict, David stands at his father's grave. The headstone is simple. William James Anderson. 1956, 2024, beloved father, no mention of husband. Catherine's buried beside him, but there's space between the stones. Like even in death, they're not quite touching. David's holding 2 envelopes. One is from William, The letter Bradford Mitchell gave him. David's been carrying it for 6 weeks, unopened. The other is from Sarah. She mailed it to Jessica's office with a note. Please give this to David when he's ready, or burn it, whatever he needs. Father Murphy stands a respectful distance away near a willow tree. He'd offered to come when David called. Sometimes, Murphy had said, we need a witness to grief. David opens William's letter first. David, if you're reading this, you know everything. The affair, the will, the baby. I could fill pages with apologies. I could explain the loneliness, the terror, the way dying makes you desperate for any hand to hold. But explanations aren't apologies, and I'm not sure I deserve forgiveness. I stole the only thing you ever loved. Sarah was yours, your wife, your partner, your future. And I took her because I was selfish and afraid, and because she made me forget, for hours at a time, that I was dying. You were always the strong one, David. Even as a boy, you were stronger than me. When your mother died, I fell apart. You held the family together. You planned the funeral. You called the relatives. You were 28 years old and you were stronger than your 64-year-old father. So maybe I told myself you'd survive this too, that you'd be strong enough to lose your wife and your father and still keep standing. But that's not fair. Strength isn't infinite, and I shouldn't have tested yours. I'm writing this 2 days before I die. The pain is manageable now. They've got me on enough morphine to tranquilize a horse. But my mind is clear enough to know what I've done. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't think I want it. Forgiveness would require you to minimize the damage, to tell yourself it wasn't that bad, that I had reasons, but it was that bad. And my reasons don't matter. What I want, what I hope, is that someday you'll understand that this wasn't about you. You weren't lacking. You weren't insufficient. You were working, building a life, doing everything right. I was just broken. And Sarah was a bandage. The last thought I'll have before I die will be regret. Not her, not the affair, not even the baby. You. I'll think about you, David, about the son I failed. I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. But I'm also grateful. Grateful that in my last months I felt alive. And I know that's monstrous to be grateful for something that destroyed you. But the dying get to be honest. I loved her. And in loving her, I destroyed you. Forgive me, or don't. I'm past judgment now. Dad David reads it twice. Then he folds it carefully, puts it back in the envelope, and tucks it into his jacket pocket. He looks at Sarah's letter, her handwriting on the front, just his name, David. He doesn't open it. He pulls out his lighter, a silver Zippo, a gift from William on David's 18th birthday. Engraved, to my son. Dad. David flips it open. The flame catches on the first strike. He touches the flame to Sarah's letter. The paper curls, blackens. Whatever apology she wrote, whatever explanation, justification, plea, dies unheard. Some truths don't deserve forgiveness. Some just deserve fire. David watches the letter burn down to ash. The smoke rises toward the gray October sky, toward William's headstone, toward nothing. Father Murphy walks over slowly. Did you read it? He asks, nodding at the ashes. No. Do you regret that? David thinks about it. No. Murphy nods. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for ourselves, for others, is to stop demanding answers. The dead can't give them. The living can only guess. David looks at his father's grave, at the dates. 68 years. Not enough time. Too much time. He used to tell me, blood is thicker than water, David says quietly, like family was everything, like it excused anything. And now? David's silent for a long moment. Then, blood is thicker than water, but water is what you choose to drink. Murphy smiles sadly. That's wisdom. Or just bitterness. Maybe both. David kneels, places his hand on the headstone. It's cold under his palm. Stone, carved with his father's name, covering the man who made him and broke him in equal measure. I forgive you, David says aloud, not to the stone, not to the dead, to himself. I forgive you, Dad, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to stop carrying this. He stands, brushes dirt from his knees. What will you do now? Murphy asks. David looks at the ashes of Sarah's letter scattered on the grass. Live, he says simply. That's the only revenge that matters. I'll live. David walks away from the grave. Father Murphy stays behind, a silent witness. The October wind picks up, scattering the ashes. They mix with fallen leaves, with dirt, with all the other remnants of things that used to matter. David gets in his car. He doesn't look back. He drives to Jessica's apartment. She opens the door, takes one look at his face, and pulls him into a hug. Did you read Sarah's letter? She asks. I burned it. Jessica pulls back, studies him. How do you feel? David thinks about it, about William's letter in his pocket, about Sarah's letter turned to ash, about the grave he just left behind. Free, he says, and he means it, 6 months later. David sells his father's house. He sells the house he shared with Sarah. He splits the estate exactly as the judge ordered, 50-50, and he never speaks to Sarah again. She tries to reach out, emails, texts, a handwritten letter delivered by courier. David deletes, blocks, returns unopened. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. He takes his half of the inheritance, $340,000 after taxes and legal fees, and he uses it to start a foundation, the Katherine Anderson Memorial Hospice Fund. It provides emotional support services for families of dying patients, therapy, support groups, mediation, things that might have saved his family if they'd existed. At the foundation's opening ceremony, a reporter asked David why he named it after his mother, not his father. David smiles. It's the first real smile he's managed in months. Because my mother, he says, never betrayed anyone. Jessica's there, standing beside him. She squeezes his shoulder. That night they go to dinner, just the two of them. They talk about work, about the foundation, about Jessica's new case, a messy divorce involving a tech CEO and a prenup. They don't talk about William. They don't talk about Sarah. Those stories are over. Over coffee, Jessica asks, "Are you happy?" David considers the question. "I'm not unhappy," he says finally. "That's something." "That's everything," Jessica corrects. And maybe she's right, because happiness isn't the absence of pain. It's the choice to keep living despite it. David chose life. He chose water over blood. And in the end, that's the only victory that matters. David chose peace over answers. Would you have read the letter or burned it? And if you've ever had to forgive the unforgivable or decided not to, share your story in the comments. We all carry letters we'll never open, but maybe, just maybe, that's okay. Maybe the letters we burn set us free more than the ones we read. This is a story about betrayal, about mercy, about the impossible choice between rage and release. But mostly it's a story about choosing yourself. Choose yourself, always.